What is up, guys? You're tuning in to Nikki MGTV for another military video for all your military video needs. As always, you can hit me up on Instagram, Snapchat, or down in the comments below. We also have a live stream every Friday, 7 p.m. California time, where I answer your questions live, and we have a Patreon link down below where you can donate as little as $1 to help the channel grow. We appreciate it. Thanks. After my last ribbon video took off the combat action ribbon, I felt like there was a lot of good information put out in that video, as well as like a lot of good feedback as well. Also some not so good feedback because people are hating, but it's okay, it's the internet, people hate you. I do want to clear this up. Yes, I am an active duty member, and I do not have a Purple Heart. I'm not going to be talking as if I do have a Purple Heart, or I've seen combat, or been in combat, done any of that. But if you do have one and you feel comfortable sharing some of your information, or if I mess up something, please make sure you correct it down in the comments below. I'll definitely tag your comment and bring it to the top. That way others can see it if I mess something up. So thank you. So this ribbon actually was not really a ribbon to start out with. The origins of this ribbon is very different than what I thought. On the medal, it has George Washington on it, and a lot of people said, oh, he created the Purple Heart, which is kind of true in how he did it. But he created this not out of like wanting to award this to people. It was more so because of the fact that the Continental Congress would not allow him to award any kind of rank increase or commissioning type stuff due to how the constraints were. So what he did was he created the Badge of Merit. And that Badge of Merit has a little bit similar look. It's actually interesting if you see the picture here. It doesn't even really resemble the Purple Heart from what we know today. Now, what's even more interesting is this kind of shows character of George Washington himself, because he didn't authorize this award to be for anybody that was an officer. It was actually an enlisted only award. And to think about, there's only one award I can actually even think about today, and that's like a good conduct award, which is only really given to enlisted side versus officers. They don't have that. This Badge of Merit actually had some perks to it, and that was because it was enlisted only, but that meant that people could walk around past sentries and guards and stuff as if they were officers, and they would be saluted. That's similar to how we are now able to salute Medal of Honor recipients. Even though this person could be an enlisted E5 or whatever rank they are, they've achieved that award. Now, obviously, during the Revolutionary War, documentation was not the best, right? We're still trying to put pieces together and understand history as much as possible. A lot of this stuff was either destroyed or lost. This even goes for the Book of Merit. This was the official book which kept all the list of recipients of the Badge of Military Merit. So sadly, that book is no longer with us, but I would definitely love to see how many people got this award, because the numbers aren't so solid as the database that we have currently for the Purple Heart. And actually, this award kind of went away for a good time, and it wasn't really brought back until 1938 when General Douglas MacArthur brings back kind of the normal Purple Heart that we know of today. And since then, the criteria for this award has actually changed several times. There's been new additions and modifications to who it's awarded and how it's awarded and all that kind of stuff. The two most recent ones were the one in 2011, when it was including injuries that were not like open injuries like penetrating wounds such as traumatic brain injury. This is because the scope of the battlefield has changed from stuff like IEDs, which obviously is a big issue in Afghanistan and Iraq. This is also because the medicine that we have now, we're now understanding a little bit more about how the brain works. This is because we're realizing that traumatic brain injuries are much more in depth. We need to know more about them. We're even seeing hype in even places like the NFL. Also, to now include domestic terrorism as one of the eligible candidates for the award. So, for example, if something happened like the Boston bomber type thing, you could possibly get this as well now. So I found that quite interesting that we're now adapting to the new landscape of threats that we have to the United States. As you guys know, this was actually only awarded to the Army and Army Air Corps up until 1942. This is when President Franklin Roosevelt actually authorized it to be to all services, including Navy, Marine Corps, and Coast Guard, also to apply to the next of kin. This also extended the Purple Heart to be awarded to people that were attacked on December 7th, 1941, which was Pearl Harbor, and obviously there were plenty of ships that went down, so that kind of made sense to extend the award further beyond the traditional Army and Army Air Corps. We only know the Purple Heart today for being injured in combat, and that's being the criteria, but this is actually much more. This is because the Purple Heart was actually a meritorious award. Now, being injured was actually just one of the types of merits of that award. What actually happened was this spawned another award known as the Legion of Merit, which was created in 1942, making the requirement or the need for the Purple Heart and the specific merit to be necessary at all. Now that we've covered a lot of the history, let's get into what are the criteria for you to actually receive this award. This includes injuries such as gunshots, fragmentation wounds, perforated eardrum. I know it sounds weird, but yes, perforated eardrum. Mild traumatic brain injuries including concussions, especially severe enough to cause loss of consciousness. This is very key. This is because after a traumatic brain injury, you're typically going to be observed by a doctor for at least 24 hours to make sure you're okay and do neurological checks. But the requirement for this is that you have to be within 7 days of when the injury occurred, and you have to be not fit for duty for a total of 48 hours. Now, this doesn't include like light duty, which is just pretty much like, hey, you can't really do many physical activities. This is like total bed rest. You're not watching TV, not on your phone, not reading, not playing card games, nothing. You should be at total rest to try and help your brain heal as fast as possible and to the best of its ability. Also to include any respiratory tract burns, including 1st to 3rd degree burns. And this is different than any other type of burn on the body, and that's because you need at least a 2nd or 3rd degree burn to consider Purple Heart eligibility for that person. So pretty much any kind of blistering or necrosis of the tissue anywhere else in the body. Corneal abrasion is included. I know this is very weird, but I could definitely see like objects coming out of like a IED or something like that could definitely cause an eye injury. While we know this is very minimal, life, limb, or eyesight definitely is one of those things that you have to consider. And obviously, you have to worry about penetrating stuff coming in your eye, and eye injuries hurt. If you've never had one, I hope you guys never have to deal with that. This also includes chemical, biological, and nuclear attacks. So that wraps up all the injuries that are included as part of the eligibility requirements. Now, there are some further requirements that you probably didn't think of because obviously we all just think you just need to be hurt in order to receive a Purple Heart. But that's not totally true. This is because your care has to be under the care of a doctor. This can't be care given by a regular corpsman, another Marine, or even self-aid. The instruction actually goes further into talking about physician extenders. If you guys work in medical field, these are actually mid-level providers, and actually what I kind of fall under too as well. In the next 2 weeks, I'm going to become a independent duty corpsman, and they are included as physician extenders. So I work under a supervising physician, which would become supervising care or physician care that would make someone eligible to still receive the Purple Heart. And this is also to include special amphibious reconnaissance corpsmen, IDC, nurse practitioner, and physician assistant. Since we all work under the licensing of a doctor, that's why we're able to technically fall under this physician extenders program or eligibility. Now, I want to cover some things that are not included because there's a lot of questions of what is or what isn't included, so I'll just cover some of the basics. One of the big ones is post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, this is because specifically you could put 2 soldiers or whatever service member you want on that same battlefield. They're going to have different reactions or different injuries, and post-traumatic stress disorder does not fall under this. I know that that's a big thing for our current wartime fighters. Definitely something to consider, but this is not eligibility for the Purple Heart. Another thing is that tinnitus or ringing of the ears or hearing loss is actually not included in this, but perforated eardrum is, which you're typically going to have some kind of hearing loss maybe, or you could definitely with a perforated eardrum. So that's kind of weird. Bruises, 1st degree burns, and soft tissue injuries, stuff like that doesn't count. So if you have questions, you can always refer to the instruction link down below where you can check out some of the requirements. And it goes way more in detail to the very specifics. This is just kind of like a broad stroke of what to expect for eligibility. Now, another weird thing is that friendly fire does not count, but the context of friendly fire does count. So the requirement is enemy has to be present. So for example, if you had 2 groups of people that were fighting one enemy and they didn't know the location of each other, yet they're shooting each other, and one was shot and they were both combating an enemy at that time, that would be considered okay for the Purple Heart. Whereas if there was no enemy involved at all and someone just didn't like their friend that they were deployed with and they shot them, they are not counted as recipients or eligible of the Purple Heart. So I want to talk about the benefits of receiving a Purple Heart. Obviously, this is not something someone wants to receive because it means you are hit by enemy fire, and obviously we don't want that. We don't want anyone injured on the battlefield or at any time for any reason. But it made me think because we go around our daily lives, and a lot of times, especially here in San Diego, we see a lot of Purple Heart icons and stuff like that on license plates and other places. And so it got me wondering, what are some of the benefits of receiving the Purple Heart? This is also because there are tons of misconceptions. I'll put a link down below. One of the Purple Heart organizations actually created kind of like a frequently asked questions section where they go over a lot of the questions that people wonder about, whether they qualify or what benefits are involved. So definitely check that link down below if you guys want to see more into this topic. The benefit I saw were tax-free for any kind of retirement pay. So the next one's huge. I think that's because in the past 5 years, we've seen a lot of criticism over the Veteran Affairs medical system and the wait times and the access to care type stuff. But what this allows is if someone's a Purple Heart recipient, they are able to be prioritized towards the front of that patient care. This next one is interesting because it's the Forever GI Bill. This means that even though you've been out of the service so long, you can use it the rest of your life, the 36 months to go to school. And the other thing is that it waives all eligibility requirements to receive the GI Bill. Many people don't know that you actually have to serve at least 36 months in order to receive the entire portion of the GI Bill of 36 months of schooling. This is incredibly beneficial for somebody that could have been like a private first class or something like that, that received a Purple Heart and were medically discharged and they only served maybe a year and a half, 2 years in the military. A lot of people probably don't understand this next benefit, but when you go for a federal job, there's a point system, and some of the stuff that you do in the military can actually transfer to give you an upper hand in the hiring process to become a government service employee. And if you are a Purple Heart recipient, that gives you 10 extra points towards your possibility of competing against others for that same position. Next is the college tuition waiver. This varies state by state. Obviously, we know like Texas is a very friendly state with military vets and stuff like that. But the only one that I'd actually seen was actually the Arizona state laws, which actually are very beneficial for someone that receives a Purple Heart. So if you have questions about this, definitely just look up per your state those regulations. You could see some deductions or possibly totally free college. Actually, there are many foundations out there that have scholarships for Purple Heart recipients, so that's a possibility. And also those nice license plates we talked about, I don't see that as a total benefit, but if you want to let everybody know that you're a Purple Heart recipient, I guess that could be one benefit of this. So again, I appreciate everybody that watches these, and if I messed up something and you're a Purple Heart recipient or you want to speak upon your own experiences and feel comfortable with that, please do down below for those future service members that are watching this, or if you want to just share your experience with other veterans out there, we appreciate you guys staying and watching, definitely taking your part in protecting the country and what we stand for, so thank you. And again, if I messed up on anything, leave it down in the comments below. I'll flag it and make sure it's up at the top. That way, proper information spread out. We appreciate it. I'm a one-man show, so I try and do the best research I can. But again, if you've earned this title of having a Purple Heart, you guys are going to be the subject matter experts. As always, if you guys have questions, hit me up on Instagram, Snapchat, or down in the comments below. We also have a live stream every Friday, 7 p.m. California time, where I answer your questions live. You can also donate as low as $1 to the Patreon link down below and help us out. We appreciate it. Thank you. I love you guys. I'll see you next time. Love you.